Maybe I'm just like a child. I'm full of curiosity about things, and it's fine as long as it's fun at that time. Yet, at the same time, I hate things that are tough. Akira Toriyama. What's up everyone? Alex here. As I sit here to talk about my time with Sandland, I can't help but also think about the person responsible for its creation and, of course, his recent passing. Without Akira Toriyama, we wouldn't have been able to experience so many wonderful stories and meet so many awesome characters. And with the reemergence of Sandland, which is a manga that he created back in the 2000s, I admit that this couldn't have happened at a better time. Because you see, as much as Sandland looks to be about a demon with his love of vehicles and vehicular combat, the story also actually happens to be a glimpse into Toriyama himself. And the game actually allows us to experience this and have a blast in the process. Sandland is an open-world vehicular action RPG developed by ILCA, responsible for Dragon Quest XI and last year's One Piece Odyssey, and published by Bandai Namco, who provided me with this PS5 review code. The game is based on the anime and manga of the same name. The story takes place in a massive desert, which has been this way for over 50 years, thanks to a cataclysmic event that has rivers run dry and forcing people to live in squalor. You play the role of Prince Beelzebub, the Demon King's son, as he aids an elderly sheriff in finding a legendary spring that can help provide water to the masses. Along the way, the prince will face many obstacles, as the mystery of the events from long ago unfold and unravel. You should know a weapon doesn't make the man. At its heart, Sandland is all about vehicular combat. This basically means that you'll need to be decent at twin-stick shooter controls, as its vehicles pretty much handle this way. This type of gameplay allows Sandland's vehicles to be nimble and agile, allowing for an intuitive control scheme that won't have you fumbling to figure out what the drive and brake buttons are. Over the course of the game, you'll get to build and upgrade vehicles to further increase its firepower and its capacity to take further damage. This is done by way of a garage in the town of Spino, where you get to craft your parts and vehicles from all of the loot that you've picked up along the way. Throughout my time with Sandland, I never really truly had a difficult time having the right parts for anything that I need, and the game is quite generous when it comes to handing out materials and even new parts to try out and install. The only thing to keep in mind is that in order to equip more powerful weapons and upgrades, you will have to spend some of your materials and money to level up your vehicles. So, if you somehow can't equip that shiny new gun that you just picked up, that's when you know that you gotta upgrade your ride. What makes all of this even easier is if you engage with the game's side quests and bounties regularly. Much like other open-world games, bounties pit you against some really nasty opponents that'll test your skills and your vehicle's strengths, which also rewards you with a ton of money and loot. The game's side quests, on the other hand, provide one of my favorite benefits in Sandland: town expansion. I've made no secret of my love for base building, or any game that lets me build something as a result of my actions, and Sandland has effectively baked this feature into its side quest system. And the more side quests you complete, the more Spino will change in front of your very eyes. More often than not, the people you help in these side quests will wander into Spino and set up shop. This unlocks a ton of new and useful features, including but not limited to a crafting store that lets you upgrade raw materials into rarer ones, an item shop whose wares can be expanded, as well as a furniture store for when you want to enhance the look of your little home away from home. And thanks to the game's fairly generous fast travel system, completing these side quests doesn't take too much time, and it's absolutely worth doing when you have a chance. I also love it that Sandland doesn't inundate you with a lot of side quests at a time, doling them out one after the other over time depending on your progression through the main story. To that end, the world features a ton of explorable areas that you'll only discover by engaging with Sandland's quest systems, equally rewarding you with both money and loot that'll be useful to push you along through the narrative. There's also your typical experience point system that levels you up and gives you points to spend on both Beelzebub's and your party's progression trees. Spending points on these will allow you to unlock new abilities to use in and out of your vehicle, as well as activate various passives that can net you even more loot and money and gain support during skirmishes. Despite all of these different systems, however, I found Sandland's gameplay to be very easy to pick up and play. After playing so many deep JRPGs this year, the intuitive nature of Sandland systems were a welcome break from all of the heavy and deep RPG systems I've had to learn and experience. While I'm reluctant to outright call it a cozy title, given its proclivity to showcase tanks and other machines of war, my journey through the game has been relatively easy, despite playing it on normal. This kinda reminds me of the quote from Akira Toriyama that I read at the beginning of this review, with Sandland allowing us to tap into the curiosities of our inner child as we explore a vast desert and finding a lot of fun in the simple things. And while the open world itself can feel a bit samey due to its lack of diverse biomes, it just happens to be the perfect setting for its vehicular combat, from a gameplay perspective. Granted, Sandland will funnel you into dungeons with tight hallways and the like, but even in those areas, the game gives you a pretty decent amount of room to maneuver, making combat friendly for veterans of twin-stick controls, while allowing newcomers enough room to learn how to navigate its many vehicles through its varied environs. It's a game clearly aimed at folks who are either fans of the anime or manga, and/or gamers who have little to no experience playing twin-stick action games. And I think Sandland does a pretty good job of onboarding everyone, not just these types of players. Nightmares never last. One day, you'll wake up, and they're gone. That being said, there are a few chinks to Sandland's armor that I have to mention. The first one is the game's difficulty. Playing the game through normal mode was surprisingly really easy, despite dying a few times due to just outright carelessness. Fortunately, this is easily remedied by changing the difficulty level in the game's menus, which, upon changing it to hard, provided a healthy challenge. While the game's vehicular combat is super fun and something that I really enjoyed, leaving your vehicle to face enemies via fisticuffs isn't as engaging. You've got your typical weak and strong attacks, a dodge, a lock-on, and several other abilities you can activate thanks to progression tree upgrades. These fights, which typically occur if either your vehicle is blown to bits or during certain story beats, can easily be won by just simply waiting for your opponent to attempt a move that'll force them to recover, then retaliate by pummeling them with as many hits as you can in a short span of time. I get that there are certain points in the story that require me to engage in hand-to-hand combat, but every single time I do so, I just wanted to jump back into my vehicle and play the game that way. And lastly, Sandland suffers from frequent samey dialogue syndrome, which has you listening to the same lines of dialogue repeatedly over the course of your adventure. There's even lines of dialogue that play again whenever you hit the same section of a dungeon, which I've learned to just ignore because I've already heard it before. You can't just look at someone and determine whether or not they're a good person. Setting aside those qualms, I do have to acknowledge the fact that Sandland has some of the best rendered characters in any game based off of Akira Toriyama's artwork. While its environments are meant to reinforce the idea that the world has been drained of all of its life and water, its characters pop with vibrant colors that cut through the monotone palette of your surroundings. There's a roughness with the way the game outlines and shade its characters that gives them a more hand-drawn feel that also manages to work really well with its 3D lighting and modeling, creating an authentic depiction of Toriyama's designs that definitely make each character feel as though they've leapt straight from the manga's pages. I caught myself marveling at how good-looking every single character's models are in the game, even its supporting cast. And kudos definitely goes to the developers for really nailing Toriyama's signature style. And while we're talking about its presentation, I do want to mention that Sandland's got terrific voice acting accompanying its many cutscenes, whether it's a main story beat or its side quests. And its musical compositions can be catchy too, even despite its overarching desert exploration theme playing a lot of the time. What makes these songs digestible is the amount of layers each song has within its composition, sometimes slowing down and mellowing out its instruments, only to come back with more power later to build back up to what it was before. But perhaps the biggest question for anyone curious about Sandland is whether or not you're required to have read the manga or watched the anime before playing the game. Since Sandland very much follows the events of both as close as a game can get, I can say with certainty that you can start with the game if you so wish. The advantage of playing the game first is that its side quests and bounties, through gameplay, will help you understand the rules of the world, which effectively enhances your appreciation of how each medium chooses to tell the same story. Simply put, you can choose to play Sandland as either your first time in this world, or as a complement to reading the manga or watching the anime. Actually, I have a lot of hobbies, but I've kept up with model building the longest. In particular, I love military models. As I sit here with this really cool Sandland model kit that Bandai Namco sent over to celebrate the release of the game, I can't help but think of the quote that I just read from the man himself. Sandland, as being the last game that Toriyama himself would see before his passing, is a celebration of the man and his values. Every single quote in this review manages to point back to an aspect of Sandland, showing how much of this story spoke to his beliefs as both a creator and a human being. I'm hoping that Sandland is remembered as the series that showed us Toriyama's vulnerability and inner child, one that hopefully many will discover with that same bright-eyed wonder and love that he puts into all of his work. And to that, I just want to say, thank you very much for all of the wonderful memories, Toriyama-san.